I'm going to start recording now. And here we go. All right. So today's objectives, ultimately, what's an opportunity, which we could probably move through pretty quickly since you guys are somewhat familiar with opportunities. The difference between opportunity stages and phases and what they mean, and opportunity checklists. How do you create an opportunity, which is pretty straightforward, and yet, it's important to note that. And then the detail sections about the opportunities that are available, as well as the difference between what an opportunity is and what DocuSign is. Now, the one thing that's on this list that is a little more in depth is offers and commissions. That we will really get to at our class at 2 o'clock today. And I don't know if you saw, the schedule did change. It was originally 11 and 1. It will be changed to 11 and 2 for the foreseeable future. So just be aware of that change to the schedule on Tuesdays. Okay. So one more thing, and just so you guys are aware, I will bring this up at the end of the call. This will bring you to the answers.kw.com page. If you're familiar with QR codes, you could open up your camera and it will bring you to a website. Basically, this is the answers.kw.com. It is written by KW as a resource, a step-by-step guide on how to use opportunities, as well as some of the other things associated with opportunities. If you go to that bit.ly site, if you save that link, you can get to that answers article right away and have that available to you if you get stuck. So if for some reason you have to leave early, I just wanted to make sure that you guys had that available to you. So let's jump into Command. I'm going to start from the home screen. In order to create an opportunity, you really need to be able to do two things before you get to the point you create an opportunity. We had our last class, which was the contacts class. And so in order to create an opportunity, first thing, you need to be able to log in. Second thing, you need to be able to create the contacts that will be associated with the opportunity, which again, we covered last time. And then third is you need to be able to create the opportunity itself, which is straightforward. You can do that on the contact card. And we did cover that in our last class. I'm going to show you how to create the opportunity now from the opportunity applet. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into the opportunities. It looks like a handshake. So think about making a deal, right? You handshake. That's what the icon is. Now, before I get into creating an opportunity, and the button of which is on the top right of the screen here, I did want to show you a little bit about what's going on here. So these are the opportunity phases, and every opportunity has to fall into one of those, right? So if you think about a sales pipeline, everybody falls in one of those categories. You're either a cultivate, which means you don't know if they're going to do business with you or not, but you know that they're going to do business. Then there's appointment, and that's the stage where you start setting appointments and ultimately, moving them forward where they're going to become your client, or you're convincing them to be your client. Active is when you have a signed agreement, right? So for a seller, that's a listing agreement. For a buyer, that is a buyer agency agreement. Landlord and tenant, obviously similar. We won't talk about those specifically, but understand that everything we talk about also applies to landlord and tenant, which exist universally down in this leases section here at the bottom. So even though buyers and sellers are broken out, landlords and tenants are not. They're in one pipeline, but they're distinguishable as landlords and tenants. Then under contract, that's pretty straightforward. Once you have an accepted agreement, or if you do business in New York, it's typically after you've sent that offer letter and the seller agrees to it. And then closed is pretty self-explanatory. That's when it goes under agreement. Now on this screen, I'm going to point out a couple of other things. One is on the GCI, you have potential income and probable income. Potential income is just the total accumulated value of the commissions that you have in your pipeline. So if it's $1 billion, it's $1 billion worth of commission. If it's 500,000, it's 500,000 of commission. Now, probable income is based on a probability that you score every single section, and I'll show you where to do that. But a probable score is like if at this point in the transaction there's a 5% chance it closes, then it's only going to give you a dollar value for 5% of what the commission is. If there's a 90% chance it closes, it's going to give you a 90% value. Some people find this useful because they know that earlier on in the pipeline, you need a whole lot of stuff to equal the same as something that's about to close. But in order to build an actual pipeline that's going to bring you income, you need to stack that, right? And so it's something that you can do to get an idea of what the value of your pipeline is. Where you set those probabilities are actually in here. So we're going to come back to create opportunity, but I'm going to dig into this a little bit deeper. And we're not going to go into both listings and buyers. We're going to look at just listings for right now, and then understand that the same rules apply to the buyers and the leases and landlords as well. So I'm going to click into active. And I have this active client called Joey Bananas, right? This is a client, a contact I have in my database that I have created and a opportunity for. Now, you may look at your screen and say, Joe, I don't have pre-listing active on the MLS multiple offers. That is because in the stages, right? We talked about the phases before. The stages, these are things that you create that makes sense in your head for how you run your business, right? So for me, staging didn't make sense, but pre-listing, which is a period where staging takes place, made sense to me. So I call that phase pre-listing, which is everything from when I sign that buyer agent or buyer or seller agreement, right, listing agreement, to the point that it goes active on the MLS. That is my pre-listing period. Keller Williams called that a staging period. You may call it something else. Stages are how you run your business and how you decide they're going to be. Now, that's where this probability factor comes in, which is I think that if I get it to the pre-listing phase or stage rather, there's a 50% chance that I close this. If I actually get it active on the MLS, then there's a 75% chance it closes, right? And so as you move it along, it gets a higher probability. Now, again, you don't have to use the probabilities, but if you ask me, hey, Joe, why doesn't the probability show that I have a value, right? The probable income, that's because you haven't set up your probabilities properly, okay? And how do you set those up and change those? It's up here in the edit stages. So again, I can pick anything, I can make it anything. Now, the one exception is this legacy. That has to do with our old connection with .loop. If you try to delete that when you have it, it will come back. So just ignore it. That just is an old thing from the .loop transactions that's doing there. Now, there are a couple other things I can do, which is I can actually set up checklists, which are certain things that I do during parts of a transaction. So as you can see here, I don't have any checklist items set up, but if I do, I could go here and actually create checklist items that always happen when I move this opportunity into that stage. So if every time I move it active on the MLS, maybe I check to make sure the information syndicates properly, right? And what does that mean? That means I make sure it gets out on Realtor.com, Zillow, Trulia properly. Maybe the other thing I do is I bring brochures to the house, right? And that's something that I do once it goes active, right? Now, you may do that in a different part of the transaction. You may do that in the pre-listing. You may make sure that's all at the house before it goes active. That's okay. You put those checklist items for you in the section that makes the most sense, okay? Now, what some people say is, well, what are these client updates? You don't have any client updates here. Those are if you want to alert your client that you have stuff to do and that you've actually done it. And what that looks like, I'm going to click on the settings for that real quick. What that looks like here is an email, and I'm going to hit preview, that looks like this. And this is a demo where it says, oh, hey, this is your property, and these are the things your agent has to do, and these are the things your agent has done. So if you want to have an extra level of accountability, but more importantly, you want to show your client that you're doing work for them, even in those times when maybe you're not having conversations on the phone with them, the client update is a great place to do that. We can dig into that a little bit deeper. I just wanted to show you that that was available to you. And take a step back. So those are those. And if you want to add a stage, edit a stage, it all goes here. where you can go and you can change the name of the stage, change the probability. I can add a completely new one with checklist items. Now, if I want to make one of those checklist items a client update, I simply go into here and I click client update, and this little email icon goes here, which basically means that when they're in this stage, it's going to send them an email for these items. It doesn't have to be all of them, only the ones you want them to see. Okay. Now I'm gonna click back to active listings here, and I'm going to show you that the checklist now shows here. Now you're going to might ask, you updated it, why didn't it add those items? Well, the reason being is it only adds those items when you drag them into that particular stage, and because it's already in here, it already populated those. So it's only going to be for new ones that you drag in. So when you grab this and drag it, let's say I dragged it to multiple offers and let go, if I had specific checklist items for it, at that point it would populate it. Now, as you can see, I didn't have any checklists, but it's there. I can actually click on this. If I didn't finish the other things, I can go back, right? And those are all your checklist items. The one last thing I want to point out is that you can drag these to other sections. So if I put this under contract, what you have to do is actually drag it to the point where it lights up. It's a little tricky. They're working on a fix for that, but just be aware that you drag that way. And the other thing that you can do is you can actually go into the details and change its location there. I will show you how to do that when we circle back. Last thing that might find interest is this board view, is you're on board view. You can look at this as list view instead. So if you wanted to see it like this, you could switch and look at it like that. I'm going to go back to the opportunity here, and we're going to show you how to create an opportunity. But before we do that, I want to point out two other things real quick. One is, if you're on a team, you're going to have two different opportunity sections. On a team, you're always going to want to add the opportunity to your team pipeline. It will still be your opportunity, but it exists in the team pipeline and not your personal pipeline. Okay, that's an important thing to note. The other thing is you can see all opportunities on all pipelines in the all opportunities section, and you can actually create smart views and filter them based on that. So if I wanted to create a smart view that was just my listings that are under agreement, I could go here and create a smart view where I say, okay, I just want to look at my listings that are under contract. I hit apply, and now I don't have any, so this is, I have a fake one here, but this is going to show you where those exist, and then you could basically look at it as your digital whiteboard, right? So if you think about us writing our whiteboards on the wall, if you don't want to have that, you don't want to take up the wall space, this can be your digital whiteboard where you see all that fun stuff. So once you do that, you can then do create a smart view, which is actually going to create it based on this. So I'll call this under contract listings. I'm going to click save, and now it's going to be stuck here as the default. And I can then go to all opportunities, and I can see everything, or I can quickly switch and see those. So I'm going to back out of this now. I'm going to go back to my opportunity pipeline here, and I'm going to click create a new opportunity. And I want to walk you through this. It is very important, all the things that are here. The first thing I want you to see is your market center should automatically be picked. And if you're on a team in the team pipeline, this should automatically be here. Again, if you're on a team, you should make sure that it is the team pipeline and not a personal pipeline. This might be an exception if you're like a dual agent, like dual Rainmakers, and you don't have a team account in Keller Williams, you won't see that. But if you are on a team, like a bigger team, which has multiple agents, you're definitely going to see that and need to do that. Opportunity type. This is very important. You cannot change this later on. You'll have to create a new opportunity. So make sure you pick if it was a buyer, a seller, a landlord, or a tenant. You cannot change this later on. And that is important primarily for the checklist items that you get that are the office checklists for documentation. The documentation checklists line up based on what you pick here. Then you pick the client. Now, if you had created the opportunity within the client contact card, the client is going to be pre-filled. So I can pick David McHugh, though. That's my brother. Whoops. Not finding him. Oh, you know what? Because we're in our team. That's one thing to note is if you are on a team, it will only pull from the database. So let me pull in Joey Bananas. Let's see if it's all right. I gotta check this. I had moved some contacts around in the contact class, so it's not pulling those up properly. But you would pull in a contact that would be in that proper database. So if you're in the team opportunities, it would be the team database. If you're in your personal, it would be personal. That's why it's not pulling up. And then your co-seller you could put in there as well. The cool thing is if the contacts are associated within Command, if you pull in a client and there's an associated contact, it will be on a short list here and you don't have to go looking for them. Opportunity name will automatically be named the client name plus the type of opportunity it is. And remember, make sure you pick that correctly from the start. Custom tags, these are for sorting. So if, for example, I have first-time home buyers and I want to look at those all at once or something like that, you can create those custom tags. You put in an estimated close date, a list price, commission rate. You do have to put these in there. So if I know I typically on a listing take 2.5, and I know it's going to be around a $500,000 listing. Again, this is all estimated at this point. And then you go to cultivate, you change the phase. Okay, so what this is remember how we talked about you have the phases and the stages. So you can only add it to the first 3 phases, and then you're going to have to move it if you actually are already in the later. So cultivate, appointment, active, right? Those are what you pick. So I'm going to pick active because I was a bad boy and I just added it once it went on the market. And then I choose these stages, which it could be in next. So example, pre-listing, active on MLS, multiple offers. I'm going to say it's active on MLS. Remember, you set those up to be exactly what you wanted. And then you choose if you want them to be different, right? We went over that before. Now, then you hit the create button. I'm not going to do this because I don't have a client in here, but I'm going to bring you to the next step, the very next screen you would see. You hit create. It's then going to bring you to this particular view on the opportunity, right? Now, this is the opportunity details page. So before we get into that, I just want to, again, remind you, we're now looking at this section, the important sections of an opportunity that are here. So the details page is where you're going to put in information. Now, if this is a listing, which it is, you can select the listing from the KWLS right here. If you do not have a listing to select, maybe it's not in there yet, you can click the edit button here and put in the property address here. So if I know it's 123 Main Street, and I'll just pull this up from White Plains, I can click save. It's going to do that. And it's actually going to connect it to not a real listing, but a fake listing because that listing doesn't exist. So I can either pull it from the MLS or put the address here. That is very important. So for a listing, you do that right away. For a buyer, you're ultimately waiting until that is under contract, right? Because you don't know what the address is yet. Now, the next thing I want to point out is all of these things. Now, if you click edit here on general information, it's going to pop this up. And you can change things. So remember how I said you can drag and drop them? If you have trouble doing that and it's not behaving the way you want, you can always go in here and change the opportunity phase and stage. So if this is actually under contract and it's in the inspection section, I can click both of those right here and change them so that it moves it to the proper place. So for those of you who find the dragging and dropping to be a little confusing, and I run across that from time to time, you can actually go here and do that. Now, what are these different things? Now, you don't have to put these dates in here. If you want the reporting section of Command that shows you how you did over the course of the year for moving things through the different sections, you do have to put this. In there. So the time frame isn't important, but the estimated close date isn't important for that. But for getting the reports to show right, when you scheduled the appointment, when you put the appointment date. So what does that mean? Schedule the appointment. I'm calling in expired, right? And I say, hey, I go through my script. They say, yeah, come over to the house on Tuesday. Well, I scheduled that appointment for today. So I put that as when I scheduled the appointment. Now I go on the appointment on Tuesday. That's when I put the appointment date, right? That's when I'm actually physically at their property. Agreement 1 is when they sign on the dotted line and they say, yes, I want to hire you. So for a seller, that is when they sign the listing agreement. For a buyer, that's when they sign the buyer agency agreement. Contract date, that's when you go under agreement, right? That's when you find the property or you find the buyer. That's when you put it in there. And then close date is when it actually closes, right? Those are important. If you put those dates in there, the report section will be super accurate. The mistake I see agents make is they think that the reports are going to show based on when you dragged it and dropped it. That is not the case. It is based on when you actually put those dates in there. If you drag something to the closing thing, this is the only one that does it, it will ask you for a closing date. And that's because it's very important for the for your market center administrator to have that information. So you have that there. You go through, you put all of that in there, you put save, it's going to update it on all of this stuff, right? And that's the details page. Now, seller profile, we're not going to get too far into this. The main reason is this is for those of you who are using the app. If they've downloaded your consumer app and registered on your consumer app and it's connected, they will see this information. You'll see where they are in the guide. You can assign them to a section in the guide and that fun stuff. They're still developing this section. Know that it's here, know that it's a cool tool, and know that it's still in development, right? Documents. This is when you choose the checklist items that will be submitted to the market center. So you have in each section listed, or for buyers and sellers, that is actually called consultation, under contract and closed, right? These are those things. So you go through here and you can connect all these things. Now, if you click on these links, this will show you a copy of the document that is a blank version of the document. Once you upload it, there will be a link over here that you can click and see the actual filled out and signed version of the document. These are all the checklist items. Now, we're not getting into the DocuSign section. And again, remember, one of the things we're talking about is the difference between opportunities and DocuSign. DocuSign is where you go to fill out the forms if you want to fill them out and get them e-signed. If you don't want to get them e-signed and you're going to do a physical signature, in-person signature, fill it out, you can always download the blank versions of the documents from DocuSign. That is an option too, but know that DocuSign is where you go and fetch those. If you get them from here, which you can download them and use them, but they will not be ones that you can actually e-sign from here, because these are just to show you an example of what that document is. Okay. Now, a couple other things you can do. Up here, now it says sync transaction and go to transaction. That is because I already have DocuSign connected. If I didn't, I would click a button that says start a transaction, and that will actually create a DocuSign room for me that I can then go into and work on those documents. If I have a DocuSign room connected and I have a signed document in there, I can click add a file, and you see how I can do manual, which means I upload it from my computer, or I could do it from DocuSign, which means I go and grab that file from DocuSign and bring it in here. That's important because this is how we submit these documents to the office for compliance. And then custom folders are what are over here. If you started collecting your documents in custom folders, you can grab them from there as well. All right. And then once you hit assign, it will have assigned that document correctly from there. A couple other things. If there's an item you need to submit that isn't on this list, you use this add item button and it will let you add anything you want. So for example, if you wanted the inspection report in there, you could go ahead and put the inspection report in there. It's not required by the office, but if you wanted to, you could upload that. The next thing is add a comment. If you do want to communicate with the MCA, you can add a comment in here, and then they will see that comment when they go to review things. Sometimes you will see comments from them. Those are important because it will tell you what you're missing. And then attach multiple files. That's if you don't want to upload them. If you don't want to take the time and upload them individually, understand they have to be unique files. It cannot just be one file with all the documents. If you don't know how to split them, DocuSign actually has a function that will help you split them. You can upload them through DocuSign, split them, and then bring them over. That is an option if, for example, the agent sends you all of the documents in one giant file. Lastly is you have these versions. So if, for example, under contract, let's say you represent a seller, it goes under agreement. You can't come to terms on inspection items, so it falls apart. You go here and you create a new version, and then now you have a clean version where none of those old documents from the previous offer existed, and you can just pull them in on a clean slate. Okay. You can name it whatever you want. I usually name it based on the agent that brought the offer and the client's name right together, because in my mind that makes sense. You can do that however you want. Once you have the documents already, and just so you guys know, we are at 30 minutes now. We are running a little bit behind, so I apologize for that. One of the things you do is once you have the documents uploaded, to send them to Lisa or to send them to Deb, you click submit to MC. It will push those documents out to them for review. From there, they can either accept them, reject them, or tell you that something is missing. So if you actually look these statuses, it could be rejected, it could be approved, sorry, not accepted, approved, or you could be missing something, which ultimately means that they need it and you did not upload it. So if you get an email back that says one of those things, you go through, you can actually filter by those here so you know what you have to fix. We're going to get into offers and commissions this afternoon at 2 o'clock for that. I'm just going to point out two other things real quick and then we're done. Notes, if you made any notes about the transaction itself, you can add them here. These are different than notes on the contact. These are notes involving the transaction. So an example is I like to put things like the HOA if I want to keep track of things that I need to find through the transaction. The attorneys, I'll write the attorneys that are involved there, just so I know them and have them if I need them later. And then timeline, this is just a timeline of everything you've done within here, and that's for compliance purposes. So that's more or less everything you can do in opportunities. I did record this, so you should be able to access this at any time from the office YouTube. And if you have any questions, feel free to book one-on-ones. I know those went out in the emails as far as booking one-on-ones for me for the rest of the week. And like I said, we'll be meeting again at 2 o'clock for offers and commissions. So I'm going to stick around for maybe about 5-10 minutes. If anybody has any specific questions on this, feel free to jump in and ask them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe, one quick question.
Sure.
Lydia. When you move from a stage, or is it a phase? What, like if I'm moving, like let's say I'm doing a rental and the transaction has completed, but I didn't move across through the stages properly during the time.
Yeah.
And I do it after the fact. Does that present a problem, or what should I be doing?
So the pipeline is really designed to help you organize yourself. So as you take on more transactions, if you have 1 or 2 transactions, it's usually pretty easy to manage those. If you start to take on 5, 10, right, transactions at once, knowing where they are can be a bit confusing. And that's why this exists, so that you can move them to the proper section and keep track of it for yourself, right? So from an office standpoint, there is technically no reason why they would need you to have it in a specific section up until the point that it's closed, that you're going to want to close it out, because then it gets it off your pipeline and it gets it off there. So now I may check in with Rick on this to see if he agrees, but ultimately the pipeline itself is for your organization and you're doing and keeping things in order. So if you can do that without that, that's okay. It's meant to be a scalable solution for when you get a lot of business, right? So that you can manage that and not be overwhelmed.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much. I didn't know if it would messed up anything with dates on the back end for the MCA. That's why.
No, I mean, the only thing is the MCA dates is really what's in these offer details section. So if you want to make certain that they know The contract date and close dates are really important to have in there, because that then lets them know. And the agreement one date is important for you. What's more important for them at that point is that they can actually look at the buyer agency or seller agreement, to know that you are in compliance, right? So, but the contract date and the close date are the two that are important. We'll get into this in the commission section for when you're submitting a commission to the office.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, just a quick question. I have
Sure.
forgotten, what is the office YouTube name to search for on YouTube?
That is a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head. I will find that out and have that for you at the 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Lisa, if you put in
Oh, here we go.
KW Stanford space Ridgefield, then you will see it come up. Put
Cool.
that in the
Okay.
search field.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Lydia.
Cool. Thanks, Lydia.
Mhm.
I actually have it. If you put your email and the address, I have to, in here, I'll copy it. I have to look it up in my email and I could send it to you, the link.
Excellent. I should know that. I tend to lose that one for whatever reason.
Okay, got it. I'll send it to you when I find it, Lisa.
Cool. Excellent. Grab her email because I will be closing the room out in just a moment. I want you to not lose that. So
I got it. Thanks.
awesome. All right, guys. If there are
Thank
no
you.
more questions, we'll finish up for today and I'll see you at 2 o'clock.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe.
Bye-bye.